Welcome to the Agency Action Show with Toby and Kurt. I'm Toby Cryns, and I'm here with Kurt von Ahnen. Kurt,
Oh,
what?
dude, I got a question for you.
Oh, all right.
Instead of you going, "Hey, Kurt, I got a question. I got a question for you." Um, do you feel like as an agency owner, is it your responsibility to communicate better than everyone else?
Yes, absolutely. So, if we don't communicate better, we're losing because we not only do we need to communicate better, we need to control the communication. You need to set the timelines, the expectations, because if you don't set those, if you don't lead the way in being really clear about what's happening, the clients are going to fill in the gaps with their own warped perspectives of what proper timelines are and what expectations should be. So, absolutely, you must jump in, volunteer timelines. In fact, I was having a conversation today with one of my project managers, and they were sharing an update with a client, and it's an ongoing project that's been going on for 6 months. And I said, "Well, when are we going to deliver this project?" And the project manager said, "I don't know because we're waiting for this from the client and we're waiting for this from our team." And I said, "I need you to put dates to these things and then communicate those dates to everybody involved. Let them react to those dates and we can adjust these dates, but we need to have set expectations." So the idea is, and I'm telling my project manager this, I'm saying, put a date to every deliverable, assume they're going to deliver it on that date, and then we know when we're going to deliver the project, because without that there's not clarity, and the client has an idea. Whether or not you gave them the idea, they have an idea of when it should launch.
Yeah.
You don't know what's in their head, what their timeline is, but by laying it out like that, now we can sync up, we can define the blockers, we can say they might not even know that they are controlling the launch date.
When Manana No Mas was a fledgling agency and we were doing a ton of startup work through the Economic Development Center, just a ton of referrals. I was giving out homework and nobody was coming back with what I needed, right? Where's the about us paragraph? Where's your logo? What colors do you want to pick for your template? Like nothing was coming through. Just white noise. And then what would happen is like right before Black Friday or right before Christmas, all of a sudden everybody shows up with tons of content that's unorganized and they say it's an emergency. This has to be up right away. Oh my goodness. And then look at me and go, why can't you perform? We've already given you the money. How come you're refusing to perform for us? And it's like, we've been working on this for 6 months and you didn't do nothing. And so we learned the hard way. We had to learn. We made the mistake of thinking, oh, we're trying to be nice to clients. We're trying to give them space. And it's the complete opposite. It's like raising rambunctious children. Children want guidelines. And if we're going to run our agency, we have to treat our clients almost like children. We have to give them expectations and guidelines and procedures and processes. Or they, like to your point, they just make it up as they go.
Yeah, and this isn't easy. Like, I'm not saying it's easy. And in fact, we're continually changing our process to define this. Just today, this is actually all happened today. This is another thing along these lines. We are continually talking about how to communicate better at the Mighty Mo, and I've been pushing my team because I'm continually grilling them with questions about when's this going to be delivered. And as the team has grown, so we have a sales guy now who's peppering our project managers with these same questions. And so the project managers are feeling that. And just today, volunteered to me is one of my project managers was like, "Look, I created this project log. It has all the to-dos, like all the main milestone tasks. It has dates against each task." And I was like, "This is great. Now let's share this with the client. But in addition to sharing it with the client, highlight items that they are responsible for." And I'm not saying this is perfect, and this is what I'm telling my team. I'm saying we're not going to do this perfectly, but this is an improvement.
Yeah, yeah. So when I finally adopted a process, I put something else in the process that was what it would confrontational, right? No, my wife said, "Oh my God, we're going to go out of business." Like she thought you can't tell people this. You're going to go. But I told people we have deadlines and you have deadlines. I'm assigning you homework. If you don't get your homework done on time, there's not a rebate. Like there's no rebate. You're not getting your money back. You'll be taking you'll be taken out of the lineup because we have obligations to other clients and we only have so much bandwidth to do. So you're already pre-scheduled for a certain amount of work. And if you can't do your homework on time, that's going to take you out of your slot and you get added to the back, And in some cases, we told people if you can't do your homework, we're going to kick you out of the program and we're keeping your money. Like we've already done work. We've already done stuff in good faith. You haven't provided your side of the agreement. And my wife was like, "Oh my God, you can't do that. You can't do that." And that was 2009, 2010. And our business literally doubled and tripled in those years.
So when we talk about communicating with clients, there's stuff that you should communicate and stuff that you shouldn't. Now, everybody's going to draw these lines differently. What are some things that you would communicate in your expectations with the clients and things that you might withhold for very good reasons that are good for both parties?
Toby, this goes back to my automotive experience, right? In automotive, if you run a service department, you don't write down what the technician says they did to a car, right? So if the check engine light's on in a car, you don't say diagnosed bad TPS, replaced TPS and O2 sensor, um, and test drove all fine, right? Like you don't, because the customer would read that and go, what the hell was that? And then the bill's $900, right? And so they're like, well, I don't want to pay $900 for that. That doesn't look like you did anything, right? And so there's a requirement in automotive, especially if you're going to go to small claims court to keep your money. And that is everything has to be explained in layman's terms on the documentation. And so a TPS is a throttle positioning sensor, an O2 is an oxygen sensor. And, good paperwork will say what those items actually do, right? So they'll say the throttle positioning sensor was found to not meter the air fuel mixture properly, and that caused the O2 sensor, the oxygen sensor in parentheses, to indicate that the engine was running rich, right? Boom. And then, restored those sensors, cleared the codes, test drove the car, blah, blah, blah. So I look at the experience in automotive transferring to IT and technical space as being like, I don't say the LMS, the CRM, the what, I say, well, we have this emailing tool in your website. We've got a learning management tool in your website. We've got this with your hosting. I don't say we've got this many PHP workers and this much RAM and this much. I don't go through that. I just say, this is your basic hosting package. And based on your traffic and your projected business flow, this suits your needs perfectly. That's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a situation this week with I'm pushing my team to produce lists of things that we can work on for our clients. So anytime we work on something, I say, hey, click around their site, see if you see the copyright in the footer outdated, see if you see a broken image somewhere. Look for things that we can help them with. And I got a report back from one of my teammates that included a picture of the error logs. like, and I just asked, like, I tried to be great, thoughtful and gracious, and hopefully I was in my reply. But effectively, my communication was, there's nothing to react to here. The client doesn't know what this is. They don't know. And he didn't, my teammate didn't provide like a next step that's actionable. It was just like, here's a error log. And
Yeah.
anybody who's looked at error logs know that there could be 1,000 errors that mean nothing in there, even to like the experienced developers.
Well, and the idea, intention is such a huge thing, right? Like intention's the buzzword for SEO, if we're thinking in those terms. The intention of sharing the error logs is like, hey, let me show you behind the scenes all the mistakes our hosting did for your website. Like that's not upselling a client. The intention is to upsell the client, right? And so the error log is the opposite of upselling the client. It's more like putting doubt in the client's mind.
Right.
And so you've got to be really, really careful about the things that you share and how you share them. The thing that's interesting to me is in this communication thing that we're talking about, this is where I'm always trying to go with people. Like if you're online and you're doing business with PayPal or Stripe or whatever, if the customer at any point goes, I'm not happy, and they tell Stripe or PayPal they're not happy, that money's gone. They just take it from you. And it's up to you to justify whether you get the money back or not. And if you go through that process, you for sure aren't getting the client back, right? But at least you might get some of your money back. If your documentation's not clear and your communication's not clear, you ain't getting nothing back.
Yeah. Let's move on about how to communicate unknowns. The unknowns happen in our business every single project, every single time. There's just we no matter what, no matter how buttoned up it is, you're going to run into things. What are some things that as you think about unknowns, like scope unknowns, uh, kind of like delivery unknowns? How do you what let's say you really have nothing to communicate, but you need to communicate that you're working on it. Like there's no update. How do you deal with these like no update updates, which are important?
We actually do that. We have a system for that. And so periodically we send out updates to our clients, and it's on a schedule. Like I have reminders set up in my system, right? Like you need to touch base. And it's more like a heartbeat report. If I was to like label it anything, it's a heartbeat report. Hey, just letting you know we didn't forget about you. We're still making progress on your project. When we have something tangible to share, I'll be sure to send you some links for your review. Just really simple,
Mhm.
because if you don't respond, Friday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, as they're wrapping up for the weekend, that's when they think to themselves, oh, I haven't heard from XYZ in a week. I'm going to send them a message right now. And if you don't respond Friday afternoon, they spend all weekend getting mad at you over nothing. And by the time you get back to them on Monday, you're the devil, right? And they're upset and they've got second thoughts about everything and they want to ask a ton of questions about every little detail. And if you just send that simple little, hey, we didn't forget about you message, that it's totally avoidable.
Yeah, and I think this is an important lesson that I think every agency owner probably learns pretty early. Uh, if things are off track, even if it's the client's fault, you are getting blamed. And so it's best to be proactive. If anything feels off, I always tell my team, like, let them know it feels off because we want to be really clear, even if it's our fault. Like, if we don't know it's our fault, we can't do anything about it. And so a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but sometimes the clients will point out something that we didn't know about, or they were waiting on us for something maybe, but like we were waiting on them, and that happens.
Yeah. Now I'm curious. Do you kind of like break out like quasi psychology therapist kind of phrases and statements? Like I feel like, like you would send an email that would say, "Hey John, it's been a while since we've
Mm,
chatted, and I feel like there may be some gaps in our communication."
no, I've never sent one of those. I'm not saying it's bad to send them. I always try to stick to the facts. Here's what I know.
Here's
Here's what
the
I
bullets.
don't know. Is this correct? Like, I always ask, like, here's what I know. Does this seem accurate? Is anything missing? Is there a bigger part of the picture that I need to know?
Yeah. Yeah. And if nothing else, I think the main lesson here is sometimes because we're talking about communication and we're talking like it's all outgoing communication. But I think one of the biggest roles when you're running the agency is that ability to shut up and listen. Like ask an open ended question and wait for a full answer to come back. Even if there's like a gap in their talking or like an awkward pause between sentences, let them finish that thought. Don't interrupt it because that there can be some magic behind that. And that magic usually turns into what could have been scope creep down the road when they're disappointed or their expectations aren't met. But if you get it early enough, becomes an upsell where they go, "Oh, and then I thought that the payment gateway was going to XYZ with an SMS message," right? And you go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hold on. Um, these payment gateways aren't automated with SMS messaging. Is that something that you had assumed was part of this package? Because it's not, but we could add that if that's something you want us to scope out for you." Right. Whereas if
Mhm.
so the project was over and they go, "I did a test transaction and I didn't even get a text message." Then you go, "Okay."
Yeah. I love this idea of letting them fill the awkward gaps. It's um, just a great communication strategy generally, especially in sales, and for the reason you just described. Similarly, I always try to ask open-ended how, why, what questions rather than ask specifics because oftentimes things are lost when I ask specifics, especially in our industry where there's a lot of like jargon and miscommunications about what to be built. Like someone's like, I just need here's an example. Um,
I just need a
somebody
landing page.
we did a design, a really nice design for the company contracted us to do the design. We're going to build it. We sent them our initial mock-ups. They go, we need more wow. And I go, okay. So we engaged them in a conversation, said, let's talk about the wow. Can you show us a couple of examples? And they did. And what it ended up being was motion, text motion. Picture like Beaver Builder Elementor.
Oh,
There's a little option. Do you want this to fade in? Do you want this to slide or flip? Like
yeah,
these are just simple options that we can tweak with a minute of effort, But like we didn't know that until we talked to them. And then it ended up turning into a bigger idea because then we had that. We go, okay, now we kind of know what they're talking about. What else how could we push this concept for them? And what we ended up producing was a really awesome uh, text animation that happens. It slides behind a picture, and it's outside of the normal box model. It's just like a
yeah.
really neat thing. But we wouldn't have gotten there if we had just like been like, oh, they want more wow. Let's just send them something wow, what we think is wow. Because I
Put some
thought it was
fluorescent
really
pink
something.
on there and see what happens.
Yeah, because I when I heard that, I go, what I think is wow is probably way different than what they think, and it was.
I once worked with an executive at a company, a large company, and we had presented a sample of something to them. And it was a first draft, very much a first draft. Hey, this is very much a first draft, right? You announce what it is, but this is the concept, and this is the proof of concept, and this is what we're trying to flesh out. And he literally said, I was hoping for some more pizzazz, a little more pop. And I said, "Can you describe pizzazz?" And he looked at me like I was the devil, and there was
Right.
a room full of people in there.
Uh-huh.
And then he said, "Typically, what I'm used to seeing," and keep in mind, big company, big budgets, right? Typically, what I'm used to seeing is 5 or 6 finished products so that I can make the decision on what I think I like best as the expert in the room. To which I foolishly said, maybe we should put a creative in charge of the project instead of a non-creative, because you need to be able to see past the first draft in order to have an idea of what it would build into with the effort and budget, I didn't stay on that project long. I was asked to leave. But when you tell someone that's not creative that they're not creative, that doesn't go over real well. And
Yeah.
so you got to be, if you're in charge of communication, you've got to you've got to tiptoe around a little bit, but still get the answer you need.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like in that scenario, this is where like maybe like a what question would have helped, and you've probably gone over this 100 times in your
Yeah.
head over the last 10 years or whatever, and like how could you have that conversation have gone better? And I'm wondering like so that person, we've all been in that room where somebody's like, I need the pizzazz, and you're like, okay, how do we address? And then you actually did a good job in the story of getting to what they need. They needed 5, fully fleshed out mock-ups. So what if in theory you could go back in time and say, oh, thank you for that feedback. What if next week I provided you with 5 really nice mock-ups? It's going to change the scope a bit, so we're going to have to send you a bill, but like we can do this next week. You can have 5 completed, like you could pitch that as a question to him
Yeah,
maybe.
you could upsell it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's gonna affect the budget if we have to do 5 completed rounds,
Mhm.
to find out what direction we're gonna go in.
Yep.
But, it's unless you have the conversations, unless you ask the hard questions, you end up in those types of positions. Now again, the example I gave was I was not the agency, I was a corporate guy doing a corporate job with a corporate
Mhm.
expectation.
Yeah.
But, um, if that executive would have taken the time as the project manager to really deliver, these are my expectations, this is what I'm looking for, this is what we're going to meet in a week, we need to have this ready to see by a committee, things would have obviously transpired much differently. But still, I think back to a client we dealt with about 2.5, 3 years ago, where everything on the screen share, we would meet on Zoom and we'd go over the website, and she would say, I think the logo needs to be bigger. Right? And we've all heard that. I think
Yeah.
the title needs to be bigger. Then she would say, I think the hero image needs to be a little taller. I think the text needs to be bigger. And finally I said, hold on, hold on. If we make everything bigger, nothing is bigger. Like,
Yep.
if we make everything bigger, nothing is bigger. What are you trying to focus on in this website? Like, as a marketing expert, I need to know from you, the client, what is the focal point that you're trying to get people to veer in on, and use as a
Mhm.
call to action.
Yep.
That's the part that should be obvious on the page, not everything on the page.
Right.
So what direction do you really want to go in? But another difficult conversation that had to be navigated.
Oh, yeah. It reminds me, there's a thing I do guitar repair in my free time. I repair guitars, and, there's this thing in guitar repair where if you can picture a guitar neck, it has little bumps that are called frets, and you generally want those perfectly level, and so you file them down and then you crown them. There's a thing called chasing frets because 'cause you'll be like, "Oh, it's just this fret that's a little high," and you shave it down and you polish it up, and then you're like, "Oh, now the next fret is a little high," and you do this, and this is what you're describing, like, part of this, your responsibility as an agency owner in these types of communications when you're chasing those frets or you're chasing the font size changes because the client's demanding it. I think there's a talent and a skill to learn about just slowing down, stepping back, asking questions. Maybe you literally slow down your speech to help you think a little slower. Leave some more gaps, like we're talking about. Let them talk. And I think that really it's about being the calmest person in the room. You're the problem solver, regardless of what. And part of the challenge is the clients sometimes think they are the problem solver when really they're the person causing the problems.
It's so unique to talk this way because people that aren't running an agency would hear this and go, "Oh, these guys are so full of themselves." But you have to remember the role. Like, you are very much filling a role when you say, "I'm an agency owner and I'm gonna fix this problem for you." You put yourself in that problem solver's position. Someone that runs a coffee shop is not an internet expert. Someone that runs an automotive repair center is not an internet expert. And by you putting yourself in this role, you are the internet expert. So you have to bolster yourself. You have to take control of that role, and you need to execute with confidence. The gap in speech to me is, there's a guy that I've studied with out of Australia. His name is Andrew Eggleton. Super, super nice guy. We've become friends over the years, but he's a professional presentation trainer. And he tells people, no change of state. You are who you are. Like, when you get on these Zoom calls, you can't be a circus. You can't put a red nose on and entertain them through it, right? You're there for a purpose. And then he also says, own the space between the words. Oh, just own it. Like, have a gap, have things that you want to highlight, that you want to focus. You hit that focus word and then you just let it pause for a moment and you let it set, because that is helping you to basically anchor those keywords of conversation with the subject.
Yep. Let's as we end come into the final stretch here of our show today. Wanted to talk a little bit about responsibility as an agency owner to create opportunities for your team. An example is I have a teammate that is amazing. They have talents, they have the right energy, they're the right person, they're in the right role, I think, but they need to develop some skills. And so, specifically, they're like the soft communication skills because they just rock it in ways that other people don't, and in other things that are required for this job that they're in. And so, one thing I see as my responsibility as a business owner is to kind of remain calm and figure out ways to create that space for them to grow, knowing that it might cause me some short term pain because I'm witnessing it in real time every day. they're in customer communication and whatnot. I'm seeing it. I'm like, but I also see the other side. And I think traditionally it's easier to think about how to give your team opportunities with like a full-time type of employee. But Kurt, how do give your team responsibilities? Because you're mostly or all contractor, not full-time. What kind of tactics do you utilize to make sure that people can grow into their roles and really deliver at a higher level for you?
That's a really interesting question, Toby. And unfortunately, in my business setup, I really do put that on the laps of the people that I work with. Meaning, I'll have extended conversations with them beyond, here's your task, here's your whatever, right? And I'll say, hey, how's everything else going? How's this, how's that? And then I'll flat out ask them, hey, what are your goals moving forward? Are you happy with what you do, or do you want to, expand your skill set or anything like that? And then I happen to have like a ton of John Maxwell leadership communication content curriculum. I have books that I can lend out to folks. I'm typically, because I'm really big on the soft skill thing. To your point, people can code, people can do things, but for some reason, man, when it comes to talking to a business owner, they just, I don't know what happens. They like lose their minds. And so I'll offer them, resources and offer them training for that. But I don't push it. Like, because here's the deal. If they're interested in growth and they're interested in development and they accept my offer and they, hat in hand are grateful, gracious, and they do things and they move forward, they're my people. Like I'm going to keep working with them, giving them more work, more responsibilities, and constantly monitoring with them. Like, hey, am I do you have the bandwidth for this? Are you good? Do I need to find anybody else? Like always having that open, clear communication. But if I offer it and they act like, I'm good. Well, you're good now and you're doing decent work, but I'm probably going to look for someone else that wants to grow and expand. And you and I have talked offline. I mean, I'm looking to actually add staff as you've added staff. And so when I am looking at that, I'm looking for people that have accepted that pathway, to be potential employees because they're interested in development.
Yeah. I also think there's something I try to do as much as possible is ask questions consistently. So the idea is I'm measuring, this is where the things that are measured are the things that get worked on. And so with my project managers, I'm continually hounding them with, when will this be delivered? And they know every meeting that's going to be asked. And I just think that's core to what we're doing. And so I ask it. Similarly with developers, when they deliver something and don't say how they delivered it or how they, let's say they solved a bug, oftentimes they won't share how. I will ask them how. And it's interesting because some teammates will kind of pick up on that and show up to the meetings. And I know he's going to ask this, so I'm going to be prepared. And even on the task, they'll just start. But then there are teammates who will never change. And
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing because um, I don't quite know what to do with that because, like, I'm continually saying these are the things that are important, and it's just not sinking in. And there are times where I'm like, gosh, this is really annoying. And then there are times where I'm like, you know what? This is just their quirk, and they deliver other things in a way that are great for the company. It's a weird balance.
Well, there is the realization that all business owners need to make, regardless whether they're an agency or anything else. If you're expecting people that work for you to like take ownership or be proactive, like on certain things, they're at some level they're not. They're employees, right? They're there to do a task, get paid, and move forward. When you have people that do step up or get proactive, I think it's super important to reward that tendency and let others see that. For instance, your project manager with the calendar questions.
Mhm.
If I was your project manager and we met every Thursday morning, Wednesday night, you would have an email that would say,
Yeah.
hey, just so you know, here's the calendar we've developed for the week going forward. I know you're probably going to want to discuss it tomorrow.
Yep.
Boom. Right. And you would be like, wow, that's neat.
Uh-huh. And I think if there's any employees listening, when I was CTO of a pretty big startup, and we had a Thursday. I would sit down with the CMO or COO every Thursday, and I would part of like I would do what you did. I would create the agenda. I would show up with the agenda, and it did a few things. One, it makes me look like I know what I'm doing, even if I don't. I have an agenda. They don't need to think about it. They know they can rely on me, so they're worried about less. They feel like I'm on top of it. But also now I'm controlling the conversation.
Yep. Some would describe that as manipulative, and some would describe that as proactive, and some wouldn't know how to describe it.
Mhm.
So, if you fall into those categories and you're listening to this, maybe you want to work on trying to fit into a different category.
Yeah, I think too, like you will get feedback if you show up to meetings with agendas. Like if my project managers will sometimes do it. I shouldn't beat up on them, but sometimes they'll show up and it becomes pretty clear they're covering for something. And then I the thing they're covering is they don't know the delivery date. almost every time. And so I'll immediately like, okay, that's all good. When's it going to be delivered?
Maybe you should start your meetings with, "I feel like you're hiding something." What what is the one question I should be asking you today?
Yeah. Well, we'll close with that. Thanks so much for joining us today. Please like and subscribe and all that stuff. Kurt, where can people find you on the internets?
Mañana No Mas is the agency name and all the social accounts. And then LinkedIn, Kurt Von Ahnen on LinkedIn. I'm the only Kurt Von Ahnen there. When you find me, you know you got me.
Great. And I'm Toby
You?
Cryns. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Cryns is my last name, or at the Mighty Mo, TheMighthymo.com. This has been another episode of Agency Action with Toby and Kurt. We'll see you next time.